Okay, this next identification is called Fort Sumter. And again, 4 to 7 sentences on this, please. Um, so this thou is the beginning of the Civil War. And you can see from John Brown and other things we've talked about, the violence was growing and growing and growing, violence between Southern and North, sometimes family between families, brother against brother, all over the issue of slavery. And the very different thought processes of the North was in combat mentally with the thought processes of the South. And the South would not give up on this idea of slavery. And of course, it was mostly the wealthy in the South or upper middle classes that had slaves. And actually, slavery hurt the working class in the South. Why would that be? Sometimes they will ask in class, but it hurt the working class because if the Southern farms and plantations could have free slaves, then many people who would be able to work for money and have jobs were unemployed. So there was a lot of unemployment in the South, and so that you had Appalachia and poverty all across the South because the institution of slavery only benefited the wealthy or the higher upper classes. And the working classes and the poorer classes who were not slaves were actually hurt too because of the great lack of jobs for many decades. So the South was a poverty-stricken area, and it had a lack of industry, which is important to understand because in the war that put the South in a bad position as far as winning the war. So the war was to begin on April 12, 1861. Why that date? Because Abraham Lincoln was elected president shortly before that. And once the South realized that Lincoln was the new president, and they knew that Lincoln would want to end slavery at some point, they decided that this was their chance to break off and form a new country, a slave country, because they could not accept the fact of an abolitionist, anti-slavery president having all that power, and they decided to start their own country. And so they decided to break from the Union. You may hear that term, breaking the Union up. Well, why was the Union broke up? It was broke up over the slavery issue. So Lincoln was elected, and I'll get more into that election next week or next class. So here's just a quick picture of the election. 1861, the election just before the Civil War. And it kind of shows you where the fighting was going to be, too. But in 1861, you can see really what was to become the new Republican Party of that time would be under Lincoln in red, and mostly the Republicans were very against slavery. And then the Democrat Party, much different than today's Democrat Party, and I'll get more into the changes in the Democrat Party that occurred 50 years later. But at this time, Democrat Party, in future classes, but at this time, the Democrat Party was the party of the South, you could see in green. And so that strongly supported slavery. These were the slave states. And that's just the way it was. That's at that time. And you have California and Oregon also against slavery. And as much as that was, the South wanted to spread slaves to California. But there was some fighting out there too. So this is just at the time of the election, and then the war began right after this. So what is Fort Sumter, your next identification? Fort Sumter, and you can write this down, is the first battle of the Civil War. And it occurred on 1861, April 12th to April 13th. Okay, a 2-day battle. And what surprises people is that it wasn't that the North attacked the South. The first battle was actually the South attacked the North. So the South, also known as the rebels, attacked the North. And why is that? Because the Southern forces thought that Lincoln had just won. They thought they could basically intimidate Lincoln into withdrawing all his troops from the South. And then basically Lincoln, hoping Lincoln would just accept the separation between the two and allow the South to start its own country. So this was an attempt really to a quick strike to try and break up the Union into two countries, but it didn't work. Fort Sumter was attacked in 1861. Um, so on April 12th, and the attack you have there is a northern fort in the water, like an island fort right off the coast of Charlotte, and so the Confederate opened up with artillery, and the northern fort wasn't that well defended and was overrun, and the Southern Navy very easily won this battle. A flag from Fort Sumter, obviously tattered from the fighting. So again, there's another picture on a stamp from later of the Battle of Fort Sumter. This two-day battle in 1861, which for your ID is what started the first battle of the American Civil War. See here another shot of a tattered flag. And so the fighting went on for 2 days, and the South easily won this first battle. Another stamp from a later era showing Fort Sumter. And so, and now, like, this is more closer today, we see Fort Sumter National Monument. So, what is Fort Sumter? All right. It occurred in 1861. The South attacked the North Island outpost and won the fight. And the Northern Navy took off and left and abandoned the fort. And now the South had this fort. But the result of the battle was just temporary. It was just a temporary victory. But that's it. The Fort Sumter, it began the Civil War in April of 1861, which you should write down in your ID. That should be a pretty easy ID. Okay with that one. All right.